The bird the day the sky went dark. Emergency alerts screamed across every device on Earth simultaneously. People everywhere stopped what they were doing and looked up. The sky had changed. Massive structures hung in the atmosphere like dark clouds that refused to move. They were ships, hundreds of them, and they belonged to the Zenthra Empire. Commander Vexthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, his scales gleaming under the cold blue lights. He was a reptilian creature, tall and muscular with eyes that held no warmth. For 200 years, the Zenthra had ruled over 40 star systems with an iron fist. They demanded tribute, obedience, and absolute loyalty from every species they encountered. 3 years ago they had approached Earth with an offer. Join their empire, pay their taxes, follow their laws, and receive their protection. Earth's governments had debated for months before delivering their answer. Humanity would not bow to alien overlords. They would remain free and independent. Vexthor had never forgotten that insult. Today he would make humanity pay for their arrogance. The mooring arrived. The cargo bays of the Zenthra ships opened and pods began raining down onto Earth's surface. They fell like metal teardrops, landing cities, farmlands, deserts, and forests. 6 million pods scattered across every continent. Inside each pod was a Morven refugee. The Maureen were a gentle species. They stood about 5 feet tall with soft fur-covered bodies that ranged color from pale silver to deep violet. Their faces were round with large, expressive eyes that seemed to hold infinite sadness. They had delicate hands with 4 fingers, and they moved with a grace that seemed almost musical. Their home world had been called Morva, a planet of endless meadows and crystal clear rivers, but that world was gone. Now destroyed in a war the Zenthra had started and then abandoned. The Maureen had become wanderers, moving from planet to planet, always unwelcome. Other species called them weak, useless, and a burden. Nobody wanted them. Vexthor activated the communication array. His face appeared on every screen across Earth. His voice was cold and mocking as he spoke. Humans of Earth, you rejected our generous offer of membership in our empire. You claimed you valued freedom and independence above all else. Now we test those values. We have given you 6 million Morven refugees. They need food, water, shelter, and medical care. They speak a language you cannot understand. They have customs that will confuse you. They will strain your resources and challenge your patience. Let us see how long your pride survives when your cities overflow and your supplies run short. You wanted to stand alone. Now stand alone with them. The transmission ended. The Zenthra ships engaged their engines and vanished into the darkness of space, leaving Earth with 6 million frightened aliens and no instructions. The emergency response. Dr. Sarah Chin was in her office at the United Nations headquarters when the ships appeared. She was the director of the Global Crisis Response Initiative, a position she had held for 7 years. Before that, she had spent 15 years coordinating disaster relief in war zones and refugee camps around the world. She had seen humanity at its worst and at its best. Her phone rang continuously. Every world leader wanted answers. Military commanders wanted orders. News agencies wanted statements, but Sarah had no answers yet. She needed information. First, she assembled her team in the main conference room. Maps covered the walls showing landing sites across the Planet, initial reports were flooding in. The Morven appeared peaceful but terrified. Many were injured from the rough landings. All of them were confused and traumatized. What do we know about their biology? Sarah asked her science advisor, Dr. James Park. James pulled up data on the main screen. They breathe our atmosphere with no problems. They need slightly cooler temperatures than we do, preferably between 50 and 65 degrees F. They eat plants, fruits and fungi. No meat. Their bodies cannot process animal proteins. They need about 3 L of water per day. They have a strong sense of community and become distressed when separated from their family groups. Sarah nodded, processing the information quickly. Medical needs. Many have injuries from the landing impacts, broken bones, lacerations and internal trauma. They are also showing signs of severe psychological distress. From what we can tell, they have been refugees for decades, moving from world to world, facing rejection and abuse everywhere they go. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. These beings had suffered for years, perhaps their entire lives. General Patricia Morrison spoke next. She was the head of the UN Emergency Military Response Unit. Ma'am, we have units ready to deploy to every landing site. We can establish perimeter security and begin organizing the refugees into processing centers within 24 hours. Sarah considered this carefully. Processing centers could easily become prison camps if they were not careful. She had seen that happen before in human conflicts. No camps, Sarah said firmly. We will not put them behind fences. We will establish reception zones where they can receive medical care, food and water, but these will be open facilities. The Marine need to feel safe, not imprisoned. Some of the military officers looked uncomfortable, but General Morrison nodded her agreement. Understood, ma'am. We will make it work. First contact in Georgia, outside the city of Atlanta. Construction worker named Marcus Webb was driving home from his job site when he saw the pods falling from the sky. One landed in a field just off the highway. Marcus pulled his truck over and ran toward it. The pod had cracked open on impact. Inside, a Maureen family huddled together. There was an adult, possibly the parent, holding 2 smaller Maureen who appeared to be children. They were making soft musical sounds that Marcus assumed was their language. The adult Maureen looked at Marcus with eyes full of fear. It pulled the children closer as if expecting violence. Marcus stopped several feet away and raised his hand slowly, trying to show he meant no harm. Hey, it's okay, he said softly, even though he knew they could not understand him. I'm not going to hurt you. He noticed the children were shivering. The evening air was cold and their fur was not thick enough to protect them. Marcus took off his heavy work jacket and slowly approached. Adult Morven flinched but did not run. Marcus draped the jacket over the children. They immediately huddled into its warmth. The adult Maureen looked at Marcus with confusion, then made a series of soft sounds that seemed like questions. You're cold in that jacket. Will help, Marcus said. Come on, my truck has heat. Let's get you somewhere safe. He gestured toward his vehicle. The Maureen family did not move at first. They had learned not to trust strangers. But something in Marcus's face, in his gentle voice and patient manner, made them reconsider. Slowly the adult Maureen stood. It helped the children too. their feet, and together they followed. Marcus to his truck, he cranked up the heat and gave them bottles of water from his cooler. They drank carefully as if expecting the water to be taken away. Marcus called 911 and explained the situation. Within 30 minutes, a UN emergency response team arrived. They had medical supplies and translators with basic language software. As they loaded the Maureen family into their vehicle to take them to a proper shelter, the adult Maureen turned back to look at Marcus. It placed its hand over its chest, then extended it toward Marcus in a gesture that seemed universal. "Thank you." Marcus nodded and waved goodbye. He would never forget the look in those large, sad eyes, or the way the children had trembled in the cold. "The world mobilizes." Dr. Sarah Chin addressed the world from the UN General Assembly Hall. Billions of people watch the broadcast. "Today we face something unprecedented," she said. 6 million beings from another world have been abandoned on our planet. They did not choose to come here. They were sent here as punishment, as a test to see if we would fail. The Zithra Empire wants us to turn these refugees away. They want us to prove that humanity is selfish and cruel. But I know something they do not know. I know what humans do when someone needs help. She paused, letting her words sink in. We have faced disasters before: earthquakes, floods, famines, and wars. Every time humanity has come together, we have shared our food with the hungry, we have sheltered the homeless, we have healed the sick. Today will be no different. These Maureen refugees need our help, and we will give it, not because it is easy, not because we will gain something from it, but because it is the right thing to do. Because compassion is what makes us human. Around the world, people listened. Some agreed immediately. Others were afraid or angry, but slowly, very slowly, hearts began to change. In Beijing, factory owners converted warehouses into temporary shelters. In Mumbai, doctors volunteered their time to learn marine biology. In Sao Paulo, farmers donated tons of vegetables and fruits. In London, schools prepared special classes for Maureen children. The Zithra Empire watched from their distant worlds, waiting for humanity to collapse under the weight of 6 million refugees. They did not understand what they were about to witness. They had given Earth a burden, but humanity was about to turn that burden into something extraordinary. The story had only just begun. The transformation, the language of understanding. 3 months had passed since the Maureen arrived on Earth. Dr. Sarah Chin stood in the observation room of the International Refugee Coordination Center in Geneva, watching the morning briefing unfold on the screens before her. The numbers told a complicated story. 6 million refugees were now spread across 147 countries. Medical teams had treated over 2 million injuries. Emergency shelters housed 4.3 million morphine, while the rest had been integrated into temporary housing within human communities. But numbers could not capture the real story. The real story was happening in thousands of small moments across the planet. The biggest challenge had been communication. The Maureen language was unlike anything humans had encountered. It consisted of melodic tones, subtle body movements, and shifts in the color of their fur that conveyed emotional context. Human vocal cords could not reproduce their sounds, and the Maureen could not form human words with their mouths. Dr. Yuki Tanaka had been working on the solution. She was a linguist from Tokyo who specialized in nonverbal communication systems. For 12 weeks she had worked with a team of programmers, biologists, and Maureen volunteers to create a translation device that could bridge the gap between the two species. The breakthrough came on a cold morning in January. Yuki sat across from a young Maureen named LRA, who had volunteered to help with the language project. LRA's fur was a soft lavender color, and her eyes held a mixture of hope and exhaustion. Yuki activated the device, small tablet with advanced sensors that could detect the Maureen's tonal patterns and fur color changes. She spoke slowly and clearly. "Hello LRA, can you understand me?" The device hummed and produced a series of melodic sounds. LRA's eyes widened with shock. Her fur rippled with colors that the device's screen identified as surprise and joy. She responded with her own musical tones. The device translated her words into text on the screen, then spoke them aloud in English. "Yes, I understand you. For the first time in my life, someone from another species is truly speaking to me." Yuki felt tears streaming down her face. She had worked so hard for this moment. "LRA, tell me about your home. Tell me about Morva." For the next hour, LRA spoke about the world she had lost. She described meadows that stretched to the horizon, filled with flowers that sang in the wind. She told stories of the crystal rivers where the water was so pure you could see fish swimming 50 feet below the surface. She spoke of her family, of the grandmother who had taught her the old songs, of the father she had lost when the Zinth bombed their city. By the time they finished, both LRA and Yuki were crying. But they were also smiling. The barrier between human and Morvan had finally been broken. Within 2 weeks, the translation technology was distributed to every refugee center on Earth. For the first time, humans and Maureen could truly communicate. Stories of compassion. In a small town called Millbrook in rural Oregon, a farmer named Tom Harrison made a decision that would change his life forever. His farm had been struggling for years. The soil was tired and his crops had been failing. He had been planning to sell the land and move to the city, but when the Maureen arrived, Tom saw the news reports about refugees living in crowded shelters with nowhere to go. He made a different choice. He converted his old barn into living quarters and invited 6 Maureen families to stay on his property. The Maureen were grateful but confused. Why would this human share his land with strangers? Tom did not have a complicated answer. "You need a place to live," he said through the translator. "I have space. It is that simple." What happened next surprised everyone, including Tom. The Maureen had been farmers on their home world. They understood soil and plants in ways that Tom had never imagined. They showed him techniques for enriching the earth using specific combinations of fungi and decomposing plant matter. They taught him songs that their people had sung while planting, songs that seemed to help the crops grow stronger. Within 2 months, Tom's fields were producing vegetables more abundant and healthy than anything he had grown in 20 years. The Maureen worked alongside him every day, and in the evenings they would share meals together. Tom learned their stories and they learned his. They became more than farmer and refugees. They became family. In Chicago, a high school teacher named Jennifer Lopez started a cultural exchange program at her school. She invited Morvan teenagers to attend classes alongside human students. Many parents were nervous at first, but Jennifer persisted. The first day was awkward. The Maureen students sat together in the back of the classroom, their first shifting through muted colors that the translation devices identified as anxiety. The human students stared at them with curiosity and uncertainty. Jennifer decided to break the ice with a simple activity. She asked every student, both human and Maureen, to share one thing they loved and one thing they feared. A human boy named David spoke first. I love basketball and I'm afraid of letting my team down. A Maureen girl named Sarah went next. Her voice came through the translator as soft and musical. I love the sound of rain on leaves and I'm afraid that I will never have a home again. The room went silent. The human students looked at Sarah with new understanding. She was not just an alien, she was someone who had lost everything and was trying to survive, just like they were trying to survive the challenges of being teenagers. By the end of the semester, the Maureen and human students were inseparable. They studied together, ate lunch together, and defended each other against anyone who showed prejudice. The program expanded to 50 schools across the country. The Morvan gift. As the months passed, something unexpected began to happen. The Maureen were not just receiving help from humanity. They were contributing in ways nobody had anticipated. In San Francisco, a group of Maureen scientists approached a biotechnology research center with a proposal. On their home world, they Maureen had developed advanced techniques for growing organic materials that could be used in medicine. They offered to share this knowledge with human researchers. Dr. Robert Kim, the director of the research center, was skeptical at first, but when the Maureen demonstrated their techniques, he was astonished. They could grow organic tissue that perfectly matched human biology. The applications for medical transplants and injury treatment were revolutionary. Within 6 months, the collaboration between Morvan and human scientists had produced 3 major medical breakthroughs. Thousands of human patients who had been waiting for organ transplants received new hearts, kidneys, and livers grown using Morvan biotechnology. In Mumbai, Morvan engineers worked with human architects to design new types of sustainable housing. The Maureen had lived as refugees for so long that they had become experts at creating efficient, comfortable living spaces with minimal resources. Their designs used half the energy of traditional buildings and could be constructed in a fraction of the time. In Rio de Janeiro, Morvan artists introduced humans to their traditional music and visual arts. Their songs were unlike anything Earth had ever heard, complex melodies that seemed to touch something deep in the human soul. Their visual art used bioluminescent paints that changed color based on the viewer's emotional state. Museums around the world began featuring Morvan art exhibitions, and human audiences were mesmerized. The refugees, who had been dumped on Earth as a burden, were becoming partners in building a better future for both species. The Empire returns. Commander Vexler stood on the bridge of his flagship exactly 1 year after he had abandoned the Maureen on Earth. He had returned to witness humanity's failure. The Zentra High Council had ordered him to document Earth's collapse so they could broadcast it across the galaxy as a warning to other species who might consider defying. The Empire, his crew activated the long-range scanners and began analyzing Earth's surface. Vexter expected to see chaos, overcrowded cities, violence, the streets, and economic collapse. Instead, what he saw made no sense. Scanners showed Morven and humans working together in agricultural fields. They showed mixed neighborhoods where both species lived side by side. They showed schools where Morven and human children learned together. They showed hospitals where Morven biotechnology was saving human lives. This is impossible. Vexter hissed, "Scan again. The equipment must be malfunctioning." His crew scanned 3 more times. The results were the same. Earth had not collapsed, it had thrived. Vexter, the direct communication channel open to Earth. Dr. Sarah Chin appeared on his screen, and behind her stood a Maureen that he recognized as one of the refugees. They were standing together as equals. "Commander Vexter," Sarah said calmly, "we have been expecting you." "How?" Vexter demanded. "How did you survive? 6 million refugees should have destroyed your economy and torn your society apart." Sarah smiled. "You made a mistake, Commander. You assumed that refugees are a burden. You assumed that helping others makes you weaker, but you were wrong. The Maureen have given us as much as we have given them. They have shared their knowledge, their art, their culture, and their friendship. They have made Earth stronger, not weaker. You did not punish us when you left them here. You gave us a gift." Vexter's scales flushed with anger. "This changes nothing. The Zenthra Empire still rules the galaxy for now," Sarah replied, "but other species are watching. They see what happened here. They see that there is another way, a way based on cooperation instead of domination. Your Empire's days are numbered, Commander, and you helped us prove it." Vexter terminated the communication in fury. But as his ship prepared to leave Earth's orbit, he could not shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. Vexter terminated the communication in fury. But as his ship prepared to leave Earth's orbit, he could not shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. A new beginning. In Millbrook, Oregon, Tom Harrison stood in his fields with his Maureen friends, watching the sunset. The harvest had been the best in the farm's history. Tomorrow they would celebrate with a feast that combined human and Maureen traditions. In Chicago, Jennifer Lopez watched her students graduate. Half of them were human, half were Morven, and all of them were ready to change the world together. In San Francisco, Dr. Robert Kim and his Maureen colleagues published a paper that would revolutionize medicine across the planet. And in Geneva, Dr. Sarah Chen addressed the United Nations one more time. 1 year ago, the Zenthra Empire tried to punish us by giving us 6 million refugees. They wanted us to fail. They wanted to break our spirit. Instead, they showed us something we had forgotten. They showed us that our greatest strength as humans is our capacity for compassion. When we help others, we do not become weaker, we become stronger. The Maureen are no longer refugees living among us. They are our neighbors, our friends, our partners, and our family. Together we will build a future that the Zenthra Empire cannot imagine, a future based not on fear and domination, but on hope and cooperation. Across Earth, 6 million Morven listened to her words. For the first time in generations, they were not refugees, they were home, and somewhere in the darkness of space, other species, who had suffered under Xinther rule, heard about what happened on Earth. They heard about the humans who had turned a punishment into a triumph. They heard about the Maureen who had found a home. Hope began to spread across the galaxy. One planet at a time, the story was far from over. It was only just beginning.